Here at World Gym in Somerville, oh, I'm so elated I can only be here. It's me, it's BBB. We're here with the Great Eight and the living legend, Bruno Sammartino. All you people, watch it from 10 to 11. It's the best of Empire Pro Wrestling with this man, the living legend. Tell him, Bruno.
That's right. Be sure and watch it, because if you want to see the best of yesteryear and whatever, this is the place to be.
Be there! We're right here in this corner with Rocky Raymond, and we got a special guest. All you people in Boston, you can never forget this name. Often imitated but never duplicated, not in this lifetime. This man went all over the world, Australia, all over every place, Japan, wrestled all the big names, whether it be the Giant, Baba, Ivan Koloff, Lou Albano, the legend, the king of endurance, Killer Kowalski, the man that had the iron claw. I wrestled him once too, you know, when I was 21, and he blew me up. But right now, let's go to this man, the living legend, Bruno Sammartino, right here on In This Corner. Great to see you, Bruno.
Thank you, Rocky. Good to be here.
Well, it's great, you know, come out of my character a little bit here and give you a great interview, but you know, in professional wrestling today, if you don't have a character, you're not much of anything. But back in your day, it was boots and tights, and I want you to tell a little bit about the old days of wrestling, what it meant to go into the ring with a pair of trunks, a pair of boots, and what I call Bruno Sammartino charisma.
Well, in those days, you know, we had so many, such great talent. You mentioned the Kowalskis, the Koloff, Tanaka, Bill Miller, Donnie or Jonathan. I could go on and on and on. And these guys, in my opinion, they were all great athletes. They were always in great shape. No drugs. They were strictly legitimate endurance and bodies from hard training and so forth. And when we went in the ring, I think that we gave the people some wrestling, we gave them some roughhousing, but overall, we showed them our great conditioning, we showed them our wrestling skills, and we showed them our strength, we showed them a lot of stuff, and it was all, in my opinion, all legit in the sense of that there was no chemicals, so there was no exaggerations like it followed years later. And so I miss those days, and unfortunately, I have to be honest, I'm not crazy about the turn that wrestling took.
Now, basically, back to professional wrestling as you knew it back in the day. You traveled all over the world, and a lot of times, you were never on TV. I remember as a kid, they never showed Bruno Sammartino on a TV Saturday afternoon, very rarely. But now they got these wrestling. I know you don't watch professional wrestling. You're better off watching Scooby-Doo or some kind of cartoon, but the intensity of building up a wrestler being back in the day where there was only like 14, 15 guys underneath you. There wasn't 30, 40, 50 guys like there are now.
No. In those days, I would appear on television a lot, but strictly to do interviews, to talk about my opponent, to talk about if it was going to be in a Boston Garden, or let's say like it was against Kowalski. I would be talking about my upcoming match with Kowalski, what I expected as far as my opponent and his abilities and what have you. So they were interviews strictly to talk about the upcoming match. But the thing was, it was in a Boston Garden or Madison Square, whatever, where people came to see the matches. And like you said, we had maybe 5 other matches underneath it, sometimes maybe 6, but that was it. And so it's completely changed, because now they give it everything on television, and perhaps that's why maybe the arenas around the country are not doing so well at all.
Well, it's like putting the people in the seats. You have to build up a name, but now there's so many names, they're projecting from one crowd to another. But we want to talk a little about this thing that we're going to try to be doing with this Mac Classic stuff, with these great matches that were filmed all over the country, whether it be Madison Square Garden. I know Pittsburgh was a great town for your hometown, as well as Boston. I mean, can you name 3 of the top towns that were your favorite towns that you'd wrestled for when you were in the old WWF with Willie Gilzenberg and Cookie and all those guys?
Right, that's right. Oh, very simple. My 3 favorite towns in those days was Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. Of course, Pittsburgh too, because it's my town. But away from home, these 3 were the great, because Boston Garden here, the people used to chant my name, and they would always have practically a full house. And the people just treated me so great. And I have to say the same thing with when I appeared in Madison Square Garden. A lot of the Italians, of course, they would chant my name and so forth. It was really a thrill. In Philadelphia, I was treated well too. But every place I wrestled in the United States, I would have to call these 3 as for me, my favorite 3 towns.
And the credibility of a professional wrestler showing up, whether they're injured, or back injury, a knee injury, a neck injury, a twisted anything. And at that particular time, there wasn't fill-ins that they could pull in off the bench. It's more like a baseball game now. You can pull someone right off the bench. But these guys had to perform each and every night, whether they were injured or not. The guys like the Sheik, the original Sheik from Detroit. You wrestled him very, very brutal matches. Kowalski, the king of endurance, he was one of your more brutal matches. You compare these matches to these people, these young kids that talk about ECW, Extreme Wrestling. Extreme Wrestling was always in professional wrestling, because that's what it said on the marquee. Professional wrestling, it was always extreme, not just because some guy made up some music and put a couple of guys in the ring and made it blood, sweat, and tears. It was always extreme, Bruno. It was always extreme.
Well, it was extreme, yes, but it was in the ring, basically. Sure, we went outside the ring sometimes. Sure, you saw a chair fight, but you didn't see this nonsense with the garbage cans, step ladders, drums, I mean, all this kind of stuff. That I don't understand where it came from. But in those days, if you looked at my era of wrestling, with the Kowalski, the Koloff, you see all these guys with the busted nose, the cauliflower ears, because that came from hard blows within the ring with one another, using the wrestling maneuvers and very stiff elbows and fists sometimes and feet sometimes. But there were no garbage cans, there were no step ladders around to do the stuff that they called extreme wrestling. I didn't even understand what that had to do with professional wrestling. So in those days, I think there were a lot of tough guys, and they went in the ring, and we all got marked up, we all got injuries. And yes, I remember having busted fingers, a cracked rib, busted my nose 11 times, but you still had to go, because if you were the headliner, they advertised you, that's what people expected to see, and by gosh, no matter what the pain, you had to go in there and you just do the best you could.
And I'm sure there was plenty of nights that you could have just sat out and said, listen, I can't do it. But you never canceled a show that I remember, and I was a fan going back to the 70s, and you always showed up. There's only one time you were pinned. You were pinned by the fog. You were pinned by the fog in Boston one time. The plane couldn't land. The
plane couldn't land, but the other time what I did miss too was when I broke my neck in 1976, where I was in a hospital for over a month. Then, of course, you missed. But as far as other injuries like a fracture or torn muscle, pulled ligaments, or busted nose, or stuff like that, nah, you didn't miss. You had to go on.
Well, there wasn't too many people that could get a professional wrestler in the middle of the ring in a hammerlock and get the crowd counting. There's no crowd reaction to where they were into the match, where the matches had psychology, they had meaning to the match. The return match meant something. They put matches on now, they're returning 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 times. They're wrestling each other 20 times within 1 month, where you wrestled the same guy in the main event. You came around, you wrestled them, and then it became something. It meant something. It was a story.
Well, it's because of the way we did the match, and it's like you say, it was a story, because the first match led to a second, and then led to a third. Today they go in there, they do all these flip-flops, somersaults, this and that, but there's not really a whole lot of meaning to any kind of a build-up for next month or whatever. So it's a completely different ball game.
Is there anything that you'd like to say to the younger people out there that are per se using the wrong kind of things to enhance their ability, their size, and their strength in the department of which you really wouldn't say you to do at this time?
You mean wrestlers? I would tell anybody who would want to be a wrestler, I would say that do it legitimately, train hard, get into a wrestling program, whether it be in high school or college or whatever, but train with the weights, do conditioning training as well, whether it be running or swimming or endurance work. But do it naturally, because ultimately you're an athlete, you want your health to be great, you want to be great at what you do, but at the same time maintain great health at the same time.
All right, Bruno, well, we've taken off your time. I know you've got a big schedule coming up. You're going to be coming to the Boston area once again, because I know that you're out there now. And the best man in the Northeast from 1983 to 2004, I'm going to give you some more, because I got it all from short and tall. All these people often imitated but never duplicated. It's the man of the foundation of professional wrestling. None of these joke kids that all these wrestling schools are letting these kids get in the ring. They're taking their money, that's all they want, and that's what they have. Professional wrestling will never be the way it was with Bruno Sammartino.
Thank you, Rocky. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We're back here with Bruno Sammartino. We want to talk a little bit more about the Mat Classics from Boston Garden. Madison Square Garden, the EPW cam goes from coast to coast and border to border. And we want to just show you something that maybe people haven't seen. This is an 8mm Super 8 camera right here, Bell & Howell. But it's now going to be named the Bruno Sammartino camera, because we took a lot of these matches that you're going to be seeing on the Grade 8 or wherever you see them around the world, because they're going to go coast to coast and border to border shortly. We're going to have Bruno sign this camera, and it's going to become the legendary Bruno Sammartino camera. And we want to thank you again, Bruno, for coming down and being with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.